In this video, we're going to show you how to install the perfect Tobermore driveway, and we're going to take you through the various processes step by step. Before starting your driveway installation, it's also important to check any underground services: oil, gas, water and electric. You will need the following tools, equipment and PPE: shovel, string line, pins, screeding rails and bar, plate compactor with rubber protective mat, cement mixer, spirit level, soft brush, block splitter, mini digger, high-vis vest, safety boots, dust mask, gloves, ear protection, safety glasses. Some other materials you may need. In this situation, we're using an MOT type 1, or what you would know as 40mm to dust or blinded. Sharp sand for the laying course, kiln dry sand for jointing the blocks, sand and cement for concreting the curbs. You may also require drainage channels and recessed manhole covers. All these materials can be purchased from your local builders merchants. The first stage is to excavate the area to the required depth. To calculate the depth of the excavation required, add the depth of the block paver, 30mm thickness of sharp sand and laying course, and the depth of your sub base. A typical driveway will require a sub base of between 125mm and 150mm depending on your ground conditions. If the ground is soft, you will require a greater depth of sub base. Always ensure the finished level of the driveway is at least 150mm below the damp proof course of the house. When installing a driveway, it's so important to maintain the integrity of the driveway in itself, and we do this by using edge restraints. In this case, the edge restraints are a Tobermore Tegler curb large. To ensure the alignment and the finish level, we're using a string line. It's so important that your curbs are installed correctly. In this case, we're using a 6:1 mix, 6 sharp, 1 cement as a semi-dry. That semi-dry is going to ensure that your blocks don't tilt one way or another way, and when you tap them down, they stay in place. We've got our mortar on our curb brace now, and we've got to make sure that when we're tapping down sufficiently enough to ensure that there's a good bed underneath. Try and hold your curb in position like so, tapping it down with your mallet, but always make sure and ensure that you use a bolt level, because your bolt level is going to make sure that the top of your curb is touching your line. And you need to get down and have a look and see what you're doing. Well, here we are. We've laid our curbs, they're in place, but now we want the curbs to stay in position. And we do that by putting a concrete mix on the back of the curbs, haunching it off, smoothing it off, ensuring you don't get any sideways movement. Now we can install the sub-base layer. For a 150mm depth of sub-base, you should install 2 75mm layers. Spread the first layer of aggregate and rake it level. Compact it fully using a vibrating plate compactor. It is important to lay your paving with a slight fall. This means laying it to a very slight slope to allow surface water to run off the surface to drainage gullies, channels or soft landscaping. For block paving on a driveway, this is usually a minimal fall of 1 in 60. This means 1 centimetre of fall for every 60 centimetres of distance. This means if your driveway is 5 metres long, you should convert this to mm, 5,000 millimetres, and divide by 60, which means the driveway will fall 85 millimetres approximately over its length. This fall should be created in the sub-base, not the laying course. To create the fall in the subbase, place a string line on the finished level of the driveway at the highest point and run it to a stake at the lower end of the driveway. Use a string line spirit level to check its level. At the low end of the driveway, measure down the string line 80mm. Place a wooden peg at this level. This now indicates where the subbase material needs to be brought up to. You can do these in various locations on the driveway to guide you. So here we are. We've got a subbase in place. It's compacted, and now it's time to put in our bedding course. For this, we're going to be using a sharp sand, and it's so important that your sharp sand has enough moisture content. And the best way to test that, to see if it forms a bore. So what Dave's doing here now, he's setting in the screed rails. The screed rails he's using in this case is a 30mm rail. What that 30mm rail will do to ensure that he uses the correct depth of sand that is required for the bedding course. So as you can see, Dave's got the rails firmly in place. He's packing the sand either side of the rail to ensure that we don't get any movement. But what we need to do now, we need to use a string line from A to B, and to ensure that we haven't got any sagging in the rails throughout the distance. So what we're doing now, Dave is ensuring that the rail is to the correct height with the string line. So what Dave has done now, he's set up the second line from threshold to threshold. He's got the screed rail underneath that line, and he's checking that we have the correct depth. Right, okay, so what we have here now, you can see the laying course slowly coming to life. We've got the two screeding rails either side running parallel, and Dave is using a screeding bar and floating as he goes to achieve the required level. And as you can see, he's pulling the screeding bar over the screeding rails as he goes, and it's leaving a perfectly smooth finish. So what we're doing now, we're pulling the screed rail back and it's creating a void. So we put the extra sand in to ensure that there's no voids in our laying course. And what we're doing in this case, we're using a plastic float to ensure a good level. Filling the void as we go. So the paving has now arrived, but there's a couple of things we need to check before we go any further. And one of those is to check that the batch codes are all the same. Each pack will have a batch code label. You need to check each code to ensure that those codes match up. We've checked our batch code, they all match, so now we can get started. So we've got the wrapping off. It's a good idea before you take the bands off to ensure that there's no defects in your blocks. It's so important when you're laying concrete paving products that you mix from a minimum of 3 packs. When your blocks are supplied in vertical slices, it's so important to select your blocks diagonally, slice by slice. And the reason we do that is to ensure good colour blending. So here we're laying the Sienna Duo in graphite. It comes in two sizes, the square and the rectangle. On this driveway, we're introducing the Sienna Silver set as a contrasting border. In this product, we alternate between the two sizes, the rectangle and the square. By alternating the block sizes, this will ensure that you avoid those straight joints. This is how we want our driveway to look. Nice stagger joints, and this is what we need to avoid. But we can rectify that. When laying your blocks, it's so important that you put the block down nice and square to the previous laid block. What you don't want to be doing is laying your blocks at a diagonal like this. And what it's going to do is going to pinch the sand between the block and the new block, creating this gap. So important when laying your blocks that you check the alignment every few courses with a string line. We've laid our driveway now, but we're left with some gaps, and now we have to cut some blocks to finish off. So this is the gap we have between the outside edge and the last block on this row. But what we need to do, we need to fill it in. So we take out this block here, put a block on the inside here, and then overlay our block like so, and mark with a chalk line. To identify the waste, what we're cutting off, we just put an X. Like so. So what we're using today to cut our blocks, we're using a guillotine block splitter. We place the block underneath, lining up on the chalk line. There's our cut. Now we can put it in place. We've completed the drive now, the cuts are in, we've brushed off all the debris, and the only thing that's left to do is to brush in the granite silver sand. In this driveway, because we've used the Sienna graphite block, we're going to complement that block using the granite silver sand. This granite silver sand will complement the Sienna graphite blocks and a better alternative than using the conventional jointing sand. It's so important to use the correct PPE when brushing in the sand on your driveway. In this case, our goggles and a mask. The best way to brush in your sand is at a 45-degree angle to the joint. So now we've brushed our sand over the tops of our blocks, and we've come to that point where we've got to compact our driveway using this compactor plate. It's so important for every driveway installation that you use a rubber mat underneath your compactor plate. This will avoid any scratching or scuffing on your new driveway. During the compaction process, it's essential that PPE is used. Mask, goggle and ear defenders. Well, as you can see, the driveway is now finished. And I'm sure you'll agree that it's looking absolutely amazing. We've completed this driveway using the Tegler Curb Large in charcoal, Sienna Duo Graphite and Sienna Silver sets.